Hello,
Hello,
welcome. Who are you? Tell us about yourself.
my name's Max. I'm from a little village called Kings Langley, which is just north of London. And a fun fact about me would be that I'm very passionate about pigeons. I'm very interested over the last couple of years.
So, tell us a little bit about your musical journey, like what led you here today.
Well, there was always music in my house because my dad took up piano when I was, well, a little after I was born, and he used to play the same few Bach and Chopin pieces over and over again, very, very slowly as he was learning them. So that kind of formed the backdrop to a lot of my childhood, but I was not especially interested in music, really. I think I was more interested in building Lego and stuff like that. But I started learning the violin at 6 and the piano a little bit afterwards, and I sort of begrudgingly carried on with it. I didn't put much into it. I think about 13 or so, I started interested in the music that I saw in films because it was easier to form a connection between the music in an abstract sense and the emotional content of the films, which I think is lacking in a lot of concert music, which I think is why it's not that approachable for a lot of young people. Yeah, that kind of kickstarted everything, really.
So, tell us a little bit about your quartet piece.
Initially started off because I wanted to use some of the music of the Beach Boys in a sort of contemporary classical context. Because, yeah, no, I've got a particular passion for the Beach Boys, and yeah, I'd never heard their music used in that way before, so I thought it'd be an interesting idea. Yeah, I feel also it's best to write about something that you're passionate about because you can't fool people about that if you don't care about what you're writing. What attracted me initially to using the Beach Boys in this context was the uh, uh, opposition between their sort of their external image, which is very um, sort of childlike in a sense, quite easy listening, very innocent, and then the realities of all their actual lives, which were from the very beginning quite upsetting. Um, and from the offset, the music came out of a place of sort of pain and abuse. Really, the three brothers and some other family members in the band, and their dad used to psychologically torture them and abuse them. And it's just quite a magical thing that managed to be channeled into this really extremely positive music. But I think the music which attracts me most of theirs is when a little bit of that is allowed to come through, like especially on the Pet Sounds album. A lot of that is about like insecurity and lack of belonging and stuff like that. That was the impetus for this, is contrast between their external image and the reality. The other major aspect of the piece, I think, is the idea of aging and sort of corruption of treasured memories, really. So those I think are the two most important things about the piece.
The rehearsal process was different than usual because the music itself, or our parts, were not very hard, especially compared to last recording. But the main difficulty about it was the scaling of the vibrato from nod to extra wide. But I mean, the whole piece as a whole is pretty cool, and the scaling that we did eventually get in the last rehearsal before recording was pretty amazing, and with the electronics it sounds really cool.
I thought the recording process was I actually really enjoyed it. I was the only person with a click in this scenario, but since the music wasn't super hard to get together, it was actually okay. It meant I had to do a lot of leading in, and the way the music is written out is that there are loads of loops, so we just had to make sure we started the loop in the right place and ended in the right place. But again, it was like really fun. We managed to do it all in one take, which is great, and I could hear the backing track in my ear, but everyone else couldn't. Well, I had the backing track plus some few snares and hi-hats of the click track. But I'm so excited for everyone to hear what it all sounds like put together. And actually, it's just been amazing working with like the players and with Max on like the ideas that like all the vibrato things that Angus mentioned. And yeah, I'm so excited. How do you want people to feel, or what do you want them to like be thinking about during this piece?
I'm not gonna place any pressure on what I want people to feel when they listen to the piece, but I think it's probably safe to say it's quite ambient, really. So I guess the mode of listening there is less focused and intense, and it's because the piece has got fairly long duration. So I guess you could it's kind of, the experience could be sort of meditative. Just close your eyes. Well, no, you should watch the video, but watch the video, imagine you're closing your eyes and you're just listening to the sound sort of wash over you. And yeah, I believe that the sort of narrative, so to speak, of the piece will come across. You don't have to listen out for it necessarily, as the textures slowly change around what the strings are doing. And it should all make sense at some point, I think.
What's next for you compositionally, or just in life? What are you up to?
In life, I'm looking forward to finishing my degree so I can have a bit of a rest. That'd be nice. I'm looking forward to being able to do a bit more performance, especially on the organ, which I've taken up the last couple of years. I've got a concert for that in a couple of days. Compositionally, it would be quite nice, I think, to do something to do with pigeons or other birds, which is a little callback. Yeah, something pigeon or bird related, because I've not really done that yet. So that'd be not next, but in the future.
Any final thoughts?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you to the Ensemble for hosting me for this, I suppose. And they've been very accommodating to what I wanted to do, which is always a pleasure. And they've really thrown themselves into it. They've gotten very engaged with what I was writing, and they've been very patient. So that was very nice. Pleased to have the piece done and have it out there. I'm very pleased with it, and I hope that people can get the same sense from it that I can.